Est-ce que vous pouvez me parler, mademoiselle?
Pardon?
I was just wanting to hear you.
You want me to hear me speaking? Okay, I'm speaking. Is that okay?
Yeah, what was the name of the village where your house is?
Ventabron?
Montauban.
Yeah.
So you fly into Nice, or you take?
Oh, no. I go to Paris and stay a couple of nights and take the TGV because it's 10 minutes from the ex-TGV.
Well, that's perfect.
So I rent a car there and...
So you don't even have to go to Aix, really?
Well, I do go, but I don't go. I go by car. I don't go
Right.
into it, right? Because the TGV is another station.
Okay, that's good for me.
It was the TGV was, blocked between Toulon, between Marseille and Nice, because they had a fire in Aubagne, and I looked up Aubagne. It's right near Cassis.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What is it just now, or when you were?
just 2 days ago. No, it was on the 20h News. I subscribed to the French channel just to watch the 20h News. I know it's crazy, but that's what I do.
I used to work for them. As a
Really?
staff. I used to edit the 20h News
Huh.
out of New York.
They've changed. They've become much narrower. They don't seem to send reporters or have reporters anywhere in the world.
They pretend that they have no money, and they close their office in New York, and they just do everything out of Washington.
Really? And then they kicked out David Pujadas,
Right.
but that was an internal fuss.
I remember a lot of internal fuss.
Yeah, it was very strained. And now they have a new woman. She's coming on with the rentrée. She's going to be there. She looks a real tough.
Hopefully you'll remain a subscriber.
Oh, sure. I mean, I liked, you get internal news. I mean, a terrific amount of economic news, very detailed. Nobody in America fusses about things like that, but they're a small country, so they can really give you the figures for the whole country, which is impossible here. I mean, California's bigger than France, right? No, I like watching it. I don't watch any American news.
Do you watch it when you're there?
I tend not to, because here it's 6 o'clock, there it's 8 o'clock. I do. I mean, if I'm home for an evening, I'll watch it. Sure.
My dad never watches anything.
But I watch nothing. Arte, the only, they sometimes have Duvivier, who's a really good filmmaker, and there was that interesting film of Tavernier, which I saw on Rue de Rennes in Paris. It's been showing here at the Quad, amazingly. And he made a big fuss about Duvivier, and I'm very interested in Duvivier. I've ever written about Duvivier. And I hadn't realized Jean Gabin film, a marvelous, is it called L'Équipe? I can't remember what it's called. Some film of the 30s with Jean Gabin. Fabulous. And he showed a clip of it. And then they showed it on, actually on France 2, or maybe France 3. So that's a really good film, marvelous film, in which he kills somebody at the end. I mean, they didn't want that ending, so they shot another ending. And now they revived it, put it back together. Marvelous.
This is the Jean Gabin film.
This is Duvivier and Jean Gabin. It's about a bunch of louts building a holiday cafe in the country on a river. And then they get into an argument about a woman. And actually, Gabin shoots one of the pals at the end. And it's wonderful. He shoots you. I mean, it shoots out. He's shooting him. It's like this filming here, right? Yeah.
It's very rare to look at the camera.
Right. And Gabin was it's 30. Yeah, it's about the same time as Tony. I don't know if you know that wonderful early Renoir film, shot in the south of France about Italian workers.
Tony.
Martigues. Tony, it's called. It's Martigues.
No, but that's the Jean Renoir.
That's
right?
Renoir. Marvelous. Just a wonderful.
One of my favorites as well.
Really better, I think, than Le Règle du Jeu, which is not my favorite film. Tony is marvelous.
But La Règle du Jeu is a sort of formalist masterpiece.
Yeah.
Just kind of
Yep.
using the depth of field.
Right.
But in Partie de Campagne, that's one of the very rare times when somebody faces the camera.
Ah.
When the woman sort of succumbs to the boatman's advances.
That's right.
In that
That's
little
right.
island.
That's right.
There's this amazing close-up of her eye looking at the camera, and then that huge storm starts.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
like
the
when
eye
in
is a surrealist thing, right? That one where they cut the eye. That's horrible to watch. Which
That's
is
the Buñuel.
That's right. Woo!
The other person is 15 minutes. Oh, so we're not waiting. No. But if you have a break in between.
I'm just reading a book
It's difficult to say.
on Warner Brothers, so I'm getting a sense of America in the 20s and 30s, which is fascinating. Another world of cinema.
Yeah, I know
Well, there were four brothers, right? Warner, B-R-O-S, period.
It's funny, you're one of the only people I've ever met who's seen Tony.
Pardon me?
That's seen the Renoir film, Tony.
Yeah. Really?
One of
Oh.
my all-time
No,
favorites.
somebody, a kind of crazy guy who teaches the Beaux-Arts named Chevrier, who is I'm working now in Walker Evans, so I'm into photography, and he told me, he said, and I bought it. I mean, I went online and found a copy. I own it. He said it's the best. It's just absolutely superb. It's slow. It's a good film. It's not silent, is it? No.
No.
No, it's not.
But it's sort of quintessential film about the immigrant experience.
Right.
and
Exactly.
Sort of resentment against more people coming.
Right. That train coming in. I mean, boy, it's memorable. He was good. He then went. He was. I read a French life of him, of Renoir, and of course he went and worked for Mussolini. I mean, he was a piece of work. His son taught. I taught at Berkeley for many years, and his son, Jean Renoir's son, the painter's grandson, was a professor of medieval English literature, Alain Renoir. And he looked the mother's looks came right down through those kids, not the father. The mother was round-faced, like Jean Renoir and like Alain, and the father had that lean, bony face. Well, we could do a little tape on French movies. We could forget about Velázquez.
Okay, let's go.
That's not going to happen. I feel.
But no, we have to do Velázquez, not French. We're talking about French movies, but now.
It's how are you looking? I'm a little bit high.
You're slightly different today.
Yeah.
I don't care. Do I have to
I
tell
look
you how
more
you
tired,
look? You
probably.
look okay.
I
You
look more
okay.
exhausted. I
You
need more
look okay.
coffee.
You look okay. Is everything okay here?
I think esto me hace un poquito alto, ¿sabes? Entonces voy a tener que estar así.
There's another apple
Quita
box back
la...
there.
Quitamos la blanket.
¿Sabes? A ver.
You're not beginning for a minute. I'm just taking a look at
You know
something.
what? Let me pull this around.
O si no, quitamos
Stand up for a second.
Espera, quitamos uno.
Okay, thanks.
Estos, yo creo que es mejor que esté un poco más mullido. A ver.
Alright, cool, thanks.
¿Está bien? ¿Qué tal?
Uf,
Uf.
O prefiero.
es como,
¿Este?
claro, sí estoy encogidísimo. Es que
Prueba
Ah,
este.
¿Está demasiado alto?
no, demasiado, está un poquito bajo.
¿Quieres aquí tengo otro cojín?
Sí. No, es que esto ya bailo mucho, tío. Espera, déjame solo esto. Okay, I think this is the right.
How do I check
Size.
the time code?
For you?
No,
There's
for you.
another display button.
I don't want you to. I want you to look straight so you don't get distracted. So you get my full.
What would distract me?
Well, if you don't get my full face, maybe
If you disappeared, I could still hear
No,
you.
but if I'm like here, like this,
Doesn't matter. I don't care. You care. I don't care.
well, it looks weird. Okay.
Okay,
But now you've disappeared, right? Yeah, yesterday you looked down. That's right. At one point I saw the top of your head. I thought,
Is it in your
hey,
way?
what's happening?
I'm moving a little bit. I mean,
That's
here
right,
is
that's
like
right,
a little
that's right.
bit.
I'm stuck.
I'm stuck in this little box.
Well, I'm stuck too. It's the name of the game.
All right. Let's see. What do we
But
have?
as I say, since I think I could say something's better, but since I think we talked about everything, I'm fascinated what new questions you're going to have.
Okay. Let's see what I have here. How are we doing? Can we start?
Fine, yeah.
Okay. All right. So.
Ah,
Is that our air conditioner? I thought it was the one upstairs, but it's ours.
yeah.
Sorry about that. I heard it.
So, are we waiting?
It's gonna take 20 seconds to kill.
Okay.
I thought it was the one upstairs, but it was too loud.
Okay. So, just to get in the mood. Just to
Okay.
get in the mood.
It takes a while to get in the mood, yes.
Yeah. I have. So just today I started asking you about your first memory of Las Meninas, but I guess that was something that you didn't. It didn't.
It doesn't separate.
It didn't.
My answer to a question about my first memory is I can't detach or separate my first memory from my later experiences. And by now, since I haven't been to the Prado in a while, the later experiences are mostly looking at reproductions. So there
Right.
we are.
But you probably have a memory of maybe the first painting or your first visit to a museum, something.
Why are you interested in? I mean, I have.
You know what I am
first
interested? I'm
doesn't
interested
mean-
in and know why you end up studying painting and.
Oh, the reason, I mean, I studied painting in opposition to studying literature. When I was an undergraduate at university, at Radcliffe, now Harvard, I, as an undergraduate, worked on literature and history, or history and literature as it was called. And I got aggravated by all the endless interpretations. You will understand this given my attitude toward Las Meninas. All the endless interpretations of texts. And then in my last year at university, I took a course in art history, and I thought for once then something material, something concrete, something, I was a bit innocent, which isn't replicated, which is just there. And it was the there-ness, the materiality of a work of art, a painting, because I've mostly worked on paintings. It's paintings that have been interested in. Now photography, but then painting. And of course photography is replication, so now it's changed. But then what I liked was the materiality. There was an object. It wasn't like a text which gets reprinted, people argue about the meaning, and I thought, well, it's just a different kind of, it's an object. That's why I turned to painting. So it's not a matter of first or second. For me, it was a matter of paintings instead of texts.
So the uniqueness of the object.
The materiality and the uniqueness and the fact that it's not in words. And you see, when you speak of or write of texts, you're using words to write about words. So there's a kind of elision, there's a kind of, I think it's a bit of a mess. When you use words to talk about paintings, you're talking about something in a completely different medium. The words are totally different from the paintings. And that interests me, because you can't get at the paintings, they just are there. They're separate, they're strange. And you're using words in some way to match them, to try to deal with them, but it's a different medium. And the difference in the medium of commentary and the medium of making interests me.
So what do you do to get into?
You don't get in, you just make, well, it's thoughts after having looked. That's what commentary is. But it's words after having looked. I mean, if you're a painter, Manet painted after Velázquez. That is another kind of commentary. But that's done in paint. And I'm doing it in words, which is not paint. Maybe the best commentary is the painter. I mean, Manet was very intelligent about, superbly intelligent about Velázquez. And I'm just using words. So it's a modest thing. That's what I like about it.
Yeah, but why did you get interested in old masters and old painting?
Oh, when I studied art history, that's what you studied. It was hardly a choice. I mean, now in America, no, but I mean, now in America, and you could, when I first studied, you could not, when you wrote a dissertation, a PhD, you could not work on anybody living. Now, most of the people many people write about living artists. And so art history was the history of art of the past, not art of your time, or even modern art. It was mostly past. So that just was assumed. Or of China or of India or something else, a limited number of other countries.
So that was just not really a choice, but more the what?
No, it was just that. And if you studied art history, you were studying the past. Historic art.
So maybe we can jump into the Gombrich quote that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, if I can, I was a student of Ernst Gombrich, and he was a marvelously complicated, difficult man who was very original, or shall we say singular, to use the word we use about, or I would like to use, or they used in the 17th century about Velázquez. He was singular. He did independent work. And one of his great contributions was, he was also a phrase maker. And one of his phrases was to speak of the beholder's share, what you as a viewer bring, or anybody, not you, but what somebody as a viewer brings to looking at a work. And he was particularly interested in illusion. His most famous book is probably called, aside from the story of art, which is a history, is Art and Illusion. He was very interested in how illusion is produced, but his insight was it's also partly what the viewer brings. You play a part in making the illusion because you as a viewer believe in it. So the beholder's share was a very important catchphrase which defined that. And I, although I was a student and we were close and admired each other, my interest is not in the beholder's share, but in the maker, in the making. So I would differentiate myself from Gombrich by saying, it's a fiction. My fiction is that I can try to explain or understand a work of art from the point of view and the practice, let's say practice more than point of view, the practice of the person who's making it.
How do you do that? How can you understand the point of view?
Well, that is just a fiction. So I look at how the painter painted. I mean, I wrote a book on Rembrandt like that, I've worked on Rubens like that, I've worked on Tiepolo like that, I've worked on Velázquez like that. So the idea is to try to sympathize with the maker. So I'm not interested in as much in all the different attitudes people have to it. But after all, it was made once. It was only made once. I mean, it might be repainted, but basically it's made once. So we're trying to get back to that. We're trying to see what the person was making, and that's probably why in my thinking and looking at Las Meninas, I changed from talking about modes of representation to be interested in the paint. I was being true to myself and my own interests and moving from the kind of framing of the picture, the total experience, into what it was like when he painted it. And therefore looking at the paint particularly, the way the figures are there in that mirror, the way the rosette is on the shoulder of little Margarita and so on. So once I thought about it as how do you take it all in? What is our relationship to all of it? And now I'm more interested and became more interested in actually the painting itself.
Somebody could argue that only artists and painters and people that actually have the experience of painting could understand.
Well, but what you really might say is only in doing it do you understand it. But if we try to put it into words, we're not doing it, we're putting it into words, so we're separate. We're coming after. Sure. Yep. I mean, in a sense, you're absolutely right. But as I've said before, painters don't paint meanings, they paint paintings. So it's been a, I mean, I'm repeating this again. It's been after all, I'm not an ordinary viewer. I am that too, but I was trained to be an art historian. And the discipline, the academic field of art history has its conventions, its rules, its assumptions. I generally go against them. I'm suspicious of that. But that's the way an academic discipline works, be it physics, be it English, that's how it works. And art history is no different.
Okay, so let's talk about paint.
Okay.
Let's talk about you always mentioned the rosette.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the interesting thing well, go ahead.
No. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I mean, the paint, it's been studied. The painting of Las Meninas has been studied by, in fact, in one case, a combination of an art historian and a conservator, and that is ideal. Because the other thing we're leaving out when we talk about the paint, you said, well, only the painter knows it. But of course, the other people who know it are conservation people who actually go in there and go into the painting and try to get it back to what it was. That's a bit of a fiction too. I'm trying to get back to how mostly he painted it, and they're getting back to the materials with which he painted it and how he put them on. And again, that's impossible, and what I'm doing is impossible, but what we're doing is a kind of, in both cases, kind of a fiction. But conservators, at this moment in time, the people who say most about paint are people who are trying to repair and bring back paintings. And that is a narrow view, it seems to me, and a bit problematic. In other words, they have one view, but I, as somebody who's looking at the painting as painting and not just only at the paint in a technical way, might have a different view. So these people have very precise and often narrow views of the paint. And that's why this one marvelous study called Examining Velázquez, which was a marvelous title, it was done in combination between a conservation person and an art historian. And I think that's very advisable and very rare, because now art historians tend to defer to conservators. They think conservators know better. And it's a kind of exaggerated notion of materiality. I chose to study paintings because I like them to be material. But then if I said, well, really, I don't understand materials, the only people who understand materials are conservatives, you're kind of giving up.
Right, but then let's go back to the rosette, because we started from there. But I wanted to, okay, starting from the rosette, maybe you can tell us what makes Velázquez's technique different or special or unique if you compare with other painters.
Well, what we would
Van
compare,
Dyck, for example.
No, we don't. We would compare him with Titian, because he's not coming out of you said Van Dyck? No. I mean, we could compare him to Rubens, but after all, Rubens also had looked at Titian. So Titian is the person to compare him to, because at the Spanish court in the 17th century, they were a court which adored Venetian painting. And that was what people did who were very successful. It's not true that they all did it. Carduccio doesn't look like the Titian, but that was the really admired thing to do. And Velázquez bought into that and did it. But what he did essentially was to do a kind of riff, you might say, as I'm thinking of jazz, just playing with Titian. And rather than painting in as complicated a way, Titian put glaze on top of glaze. This is a very lengthy process and complicated from a painting point of view. And in a way, Velázquez's process was much simpler. He did not do layer on layer. He made it look that way by using extremely thin layers of paint, which had the effect, when you looked at it, of being the kind of density of paint that Titian used. So we could get extremely complex appearance with very simple means. That's the singularity of Velázquez.
I have a quote here that from your dissertation, from your lecture, from McKim Smith,
okay.
And that I like to read, so we can maybe talk about it. Velázquez succeeds in fooling us into believing that thick slashing strokes of glazes are heaped onto his canvas to create a rosette, when indeed it is all done with the thinnest of washes.
So that's exactly, McKim Smith, in that book, Examining Velázquez, has a wonderful passage where she describes the making of the rosette and says, we think it looks like it's Titian glazes, but in fact, it's very thin paint that just masquerades, you might say. It's deceiving. And the deception is part of it. You might say that's another part of Velázquez, right? I mean, he was wily, clever, very, very clever. Clever in his painting, obviously clever in the way he made his career. And so that rosette is simply, it's a deception. Perhaps one way of putting it is the deception that people has been emphasized about, or that greets people when they first walk into the Prado and look at Meninas. The deception that strikes them is spatial, but the deception of the paint is equally important. That's the painting. So in other words, deception is perhaps not the word I would use, but it's convenient because for viewers it helps them understand that there's something else besides spatial deception. There's pictorial deception, which is just at the level of the paint.
So what's the difference between?
Well, I mean, the spatial, look, the spatial deception is obvious. He's painted this extraordinary room, and everybody talks about that. That's spatial thing. But in the alternative, which is the paint, is obviously in some conflict with that. It's ambiguous because first you have this impressive space, but then you realize it's all a surface. And those two things seem incompatible. They are, in a way, incompatible. And that ambiguity, that incompatibility, is something that delighted Velázquez, obviously. Well, it's the same, we could extend the ambiguity to the picture, right? You're painting a picture of a princess. At that point, the heir apparent. But she's a little thing, and everybody around her is bigger. And then her parents, who were the most powerful people, the father in Spain, are just little people back there. Another ambiguity, a figural ambiguity. The proportions are crazy, absolutely crazy. There's no just proportion in that picture. Great people aren't big, and unimportant people small. It's in fact reversed. So I'm now moving from the ambiguity about space and surface, which are in certain conflict. And I do not agree that you cannot see them, that the trick is you can't see them at the same time. That's a kind of reductive way of looking at it. You can see the paint and also see the space. That's not true that you have to pick one or the other. That's reducing the painting, it seems to me. You can see the paint and you can also see the room. To me, the paint is much more important, is more interesting than the space, but I grant that it is extraordinary, that first view of the picture when you think, I could walk into that room. But then you can't walk into it because it's all paint. And those two are right there. I don't think it's one or the other. They're both right there.
Well, you're saying that he's painting the same, the important people, small, and I know you don't want to get into meanings, but you are basically describing what it is, what is happening there, but you don't want to get into what means that he's doing that. It's not the first time he's doing that, right? I mean, we can talk about the Baltasar Carlos and writing school, and I want to really, if you can describe me.
No, he's playful. I mean, if we could come at, I resist talking about meaning because painters are painters. They're not manufacturing meaning. So we can't get meaning out of it and be true to the painter, in my view. That's my view. That is just the structure of people who were thinkers and writers. And I'm suspicious, even though I am one, I'm suspicious of what I'm doing. I think it's good to be suspicious of what you're doing. I think Velázquez was suspicious of what he was doing. That's intelligence. Not to just be brazenly intelligent, brazenly confident, but to have questions. And clearly he was a man who had questions, right? And one of his questions was about the court. He's in the midst of the court, he depends on the court, and then he paints it in this really rather bizarre way. He puts himself in the middle of it, right there, standing next to the princess, And he makes the king little, and he makes the princess smaller. I mean, she's marvelous. She's wonderfully self-confident, beautifully posed, holds herself wonderfully. That's her. That's not him, that's her. She's been taught to do that. She does it. But then there are all these people, even the dwarf is perhaps her size. So the proportion that you would expect, which would be the way in which great people are bigger and lesser people are smaller, he just forgets about. He isn't questioning it in terms of, boy, I really think this court is all fraudulent. But he is playing with its existence, the nature of its existence. He's proposing something else, even though he's part of it and goes along with it.
What is he proposing?
He's proposing a sort of disorder. You might say, if you really push it, you could say he's proposing a disorder because he's making the king and queen tiny. He's done that before. Right? He's also, we think of the Spinners, Las Hilandaras, which is a painting only of women. I mean, just a woman's painting. And of course, in Meninas, the center of the picture is not the king, but a woman. He's very easy with that. He's not. I mean, this is not a commentary on gender. I would resist any view of that. It simply is that he is questioning and playful and witty and smart. So he's saying, well, what if? But of course he says, what if with the princess? He's making her the center of the picture. I mean, she is the daughter of the king. She's not queen. She never becomes queen. But he puts her in the center, and a woman is there in the center, even though he's got the king and queen back there who really are the people who matter. He isn't questioning it. He's just saying, well, let's think of it let's view it this way. It's not thinking, it's viewing. I will take back the word think. He's saying, let's look at it this way. So the picture to me is more, the problem in looking at it, and I'm really thinking this as I'm speaking it, the problem in that first view of the big room and the illusion is that it seems firm and certain. Yet the picture has lots of uncertainties. And that is the problem with it for viewers, that they feel, oh, wonderful. And when they had it with the mirror, it was even better, because then you look at the mirror and then the whole question was illusion. But in fact, the picture is problematic and uncertain. And it's, I think, interesting for viewers today to realize and understand those uncertainties and not simply be convinced by, oh my goodness, look at that space.
Yeah, the space is just the first layer.
It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. It's brilliant. Yeah.
It's this hole in the wall.
Yeah. And most people, I mean, they look quickly. You walk in, you see the picture, you say, wow, and then you go on and look at something else, right? That's why you see the Spinners doesn't give you that. The Spinners is much, the Spinners, all the complexity is out there on the surface. There is nothing to hold on to. There's no real space. You can't tell the relationship of the foreground to the background. And in a way, the Meninas is simpler. Because it gives you that. It gives you something you can really hold on to.
Maybe but that could be a trick, a trap, just to convince you that
it could, but most people have been convinced. I mean, its history is that that's what people remember, right? I mean, and that's a big literature on the perspective. We could talk about the perspective. That has just grabbed people. Oh my goodness, the perspective. And I'm saying, let's just put that aside and look at the picture. Other than just the perspective. But in fact, the picture, and that's where I began thinking about it, is two different things. First of all, the picture as perspective is where you stand in front. You're a person of a certain height. You're a viewer. You go into the product. You stand there with your friend or other friends or other people, and you feel that you are in some way in relationship to a real space. You have a measure. But when you get into the picture, there is or when you get into looking at the picture, let me take back and get into it, then that notion of proportionality, I am this size, I happen to be 5'2", but you could be any height, I stand in front of the picture, and the space looks like it is designed for me looking at it. But within the picture, things don't work that way. Within the picture, it's flat, and there is no proportionality. Everything's crazy. The king is small, the princess is dwarfed by her dwarf and by her. So, in other words, that sense of proportionality is not carried out actually within the picture. And it's those two things being there that make it so complicated. It's amazing to think he did that. That he invented that box, that viewing box, and then that he did all that surface. I mean, that's painting. It's an extraordinary thing to have pulled off. Now, this also brings us actually to the question that has been brought up now in the literature about Velázquez himself. Velázquez, who has on him his Order of Santiago, that red sort of cross, which is put on him as a sign that he has this stature. He's gotten into this ghastly organization, which we all think is wonderful that he got, but they were really a pretty horrible organization. I mean, they were a racist organization, let's say. At any rate, and the question is, the question then becomes, he didn't get into that order until 1658. Is that correct?
9.
8 or 9? 9. And the paint looks, the investigation seems to say that the red paint is the same date as the black paint on which it's painted. His jacket and his order, his award is part of him. So they must have been painted at the same time. Okay. So then the question is, since somebody said at the time, rightly or wrongly, this painting was painted in 1856, what could have happened? So somebody came up with the idea, well, actually, Velázquez put himself in later. He wasn't there. Somebody else was there and put himself in later. Now, the reason, what's curious about it, I don't agree with that, but it doesn't seem to me it's particularly interesting about the painting as a whole. One of the reasons that Velázquez being in the painting in the way he is that is an alternative to you outside the painting feeling that you actually set it all up. I stand there, there's a space, we look, everything is in order. And that's the way a perspective painting works, right? But to have in paintings which are not perspective, which I would call the northern kind of descriptive painting, the viewer doesn't come first, the world comes first. The world is the picture. And very often in northern painting, look at the Arnolfini wedding, which was in the collection of the King of Spain and which Velázquez probably knew, right? And there's a little image of Van Eyck in that painting. In the descriptive painting, the painter isn't standing outside painting, he's inside. He's like a map maker within his map, right? And so it's absolutely right. Pictorially, I'm not talking about history, dates, awards, and all that. It's pictorially right that Velázquez should be in that painting. There's a pictorial reason for the painter to imagine himself in his painting, beyond being proud of Santiago, being proud, because that is the way that kind of painting works. Imagine you're a map maker, and very often they're in the map. They depict themselves in their maps. That's fine, because it's flat. It's not a perspective view. So it absolutely fits the painting as a map-like surface that the artist would be within it. He should be without it. He's painting it, so he should be outside, but he's not. But he is, and it looks like he's outside, but he's in it. Now that fits exactly with the ambiguity, with the complexity of the image. So the fact he's in there is perfect. It makes sense. It's not just a matter of, hey, I've got my award, I'd like to be in there. It makes sense. It makes sense to the way he imagined that picture. The fantasy of that picture, and it is imagination, right? It's not reality, and it's not only illusion, it's also imagination. That fits, his being in there is just right. So I might just say, well, who cares when he got in there? When he did it, he was making the right move.
Without his
pictorially to have him in there is absolutely right. It fits the notion that you, the viewer, the painting isn't made for you, the viewer, it's made for the painter in the painting, who is like a map maker, who is like the eye on which in which the world in a camera obscura is reflected. It's just like a surface, I mean, we've all just been through a eclipse in New York, and people were having camera obscuras. They were finding ways to get the image reflected onto a surface. Well, that is a way painters thought a surface is true. That's one way in which Velázquez thinks of that picture. And in that case, his being within it, not outside of it, is absolutely right. So his being there is pictorially right. I'm not talking about when he was in there, why he's in there, about his Santiago, all that. I'm just saying that it belongs with his imagining of the picture.
Without his portrait, the painting doesn't.
It gets better with his portrait, much better, and
it
not
gets better
just because he's in there, because it secures and helps define this contrary reality of the painting. It is not just that real thing you walk up and look at and think, I'm out here where the painter was. That view of the painting says the painter was out here. He was painting all those people. That's what the box looks like. But actually, he's in there. So there's a conflict between the painter being the man who paints the picture, a perspective view. He looks into a box, proper perspective. That's him. Or the painter in the painting, which mixes that up. Now, Van Eyck could do that because Van Eyck thought of the painting as a surface. That's a northern way of looking at paintings. The view of Delft, Vermeer isn't in there, but the view of Delft is that kind of flat image of the world, right? It's like a camera obscura. The image is just projected onto the world. Well, there is an aspect of that in Las Meninas.
But he's in both places, outside and inside.
Well, in a way, yes. But inside is very important because it is the world. You are coming upon a world which was there before you got there. The view of the perspective picture is that the picture depends on you. You stand in front of it and everything falls into place. But in fact, when he's in it, everything is not in place. It's just accident. So there are two pictures. One is very orderly, and the other is more disorderly. And the disorder involves the little princess with the big servants, the little king and queen in the back, right? And the painter in the midst of it. It's odd. It's very odd. And that oddity of a picture, which also includes the painting itself, which of course destabilizes. If it's just all paint, it's not the real room. So against real room, I walk into the Prado, I think, wow, there's all this other reality, pictorial reality, which is in tension with, in conflict with, ambiguous with that.
Svetlana, so I think I'm getting to this is a very interesting point, that actually the fact that he is in the picture is what it makes the picture, what you're talking about,
yes.
that it's something that he was
there,
that is in the, if
his
he's
being
not in the
there is,
picture,
right. His being there makes it even better. I mean, if he wasn't there, it wouldn't be so good. His being there is perfect, because then he's not the guy standing in front painting, he's also the guy who's just there.
Yeah, but that's, you're saying even better.
So it's independent of him. So it's as if he's saying, no, I just was there. It's a kind of trick, because of course he painted it. He was standing in front with a long brush doing all these magic things with his magic, I'm using a word, right? But in fact, he's in there. And his being in there emphasizes the painting.
Yeah, but you say even better, but I go a little further. Without him, it doesn't work.
Well, the question we have to ask is, if the painting existed initially, which is one of the arguments now, without him, with some other figures, it would have been a different painting. And a different painting as a notion of painting, not just a different painting historically. The argument now is, well, look, he wasn't there, and then he put himself in because he wanted his Order of Santiago to be recognized by the court and by the king and everybody. But actually, there's a pictorial reason for his being there, which is deeper and more interesting, pictorially deeper and more interesting than just the Order of Santiago. That's what I would say, and we have to come to grips with that. Now, there's a puzzle. Did he really think I mean, was it originally this way? I mean, I would say what we would like it to be is originally this way, but not because of Santiago, because of making a picture. It's a better picture with him in there.
Because he thought that picture from the beginning.
Well, he imagined the world with him in it, which is not him making the world, but him in it. That's the imagining. That's the brilliant thing. And if he's not there, that's not it. We, when we go to the Prado, think we're looking at a picture that he painted. It's obvious. He was standing outside, and these people walked in, and he painted them. But the other way of looking at it, and I'm not going to say story because I want to avoid telling stories, the other way of seeing it is to see that the whole world, with the mirror and with the everything, is just the world that was there.
So what makes us the spectators? Because he imagines a world where he is in it.
Well, that's like Dutch painting.
But
You look at the view of Delft, and you accept it as something before your eyes. So it is simply before your eyes. It's like your eyes are disembodied. You're not standing there 5'2" looking. You're just an eye. The way you look at it, if you look at it without the viewer in front, but the painter in, the painter viewer, because he's a viewer. In the original account, he is standing out there where you're standing. You are standing with the painter, and he's painting the world. But in the second account, there is nobody outside of it. It's just it.
So I'm following your line. So when I encounter that image,
It's a mistake.
what it makes
It's
me,
puzzling.
like I'm actually
You're
part
disappearing. I mean, you're disappearing. I mean, in a sense, you're just an eye. You're an eye. You're an eye, not a body, because you're not accounted for as a body. That's Dutch. That's what Dutch painting. That's what the view of Delft. That's why it's so magical. View of Delft is central to 20th century French writing about painting. They think it's the quintessential painting. And that's because the view of Delft of Vermeer is this kind of magical thing. It's just there. You know, it's, how do we know where the painter, we don't know where the painter is. In some of those paintings in Dutch landscapes, there's a little image there, maybe a surveyor. Imagine the painting is like a map maker. He's just standing in his map. A map maker, imagine somebody making a map. He's not standing back and making a map. The map is it. And that's the way in which, one way in which Las Meninas exists in the world. It's just it.
But I will argue with you that it doesn't make us an eye. It actually make us share that world with our world.
I don't know what that means.
Well, meaning that he imagined a world where he is in it. Okay, so we encounter a world that it was there before we got there. You're saying something like that.
Yeah.
So what happens?
It's distance. It is a distant, this kind of view is a distant view.
But we
The
are in a
Dutch is
world.
a distant view because you can't get into it. See, the invitation apparently of the Meninas is, oh, I can step right into it. But if it's a surface and like a map, you can't step into it, so you're out. Your eye can look at it, but you're out. You're outside. And you can see that's a simple way to put the kind of problem in standing in front of that picture in the Prado. On the one hand, you think you can walk in. On the other hand, It's kind of a separate world. You cannot walk into it. And that's the paint. That's the painting. And that's the painter in it. If the painter's in it, he's not out here. You can't identify with anybody outside of the picture. It's all there. I mean, it's a kind of, at least to us, maybe Chinese painting probably has some of that, and there are other traditions which are more like that. It's the West in a certain period which made a fuss about the viewer and the picture, and has continued to, like the beholder share, in a way. But there's something mysterious and very, 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 well, it's a very strong and special way of imagining paintings.
You just said mysterious?
What?
You just said mysterious?
Well, I mean, it's because it seems to go against the way we feel we live in the world. But it's not a mystery. I'm going to take back, I withdraw my word mysterious, because mysterious, like the word ghost, presumes another reality, and this isn't another reality, it's just a painting.
Well, mystery doesn't mean necessarily another reality.
Well, you know.
Mystery could be just a problem to be solved.
No, it's
to
not
a
a
problem.
It's not a problem to be solved. It's
something.
just a wonderful. It's not a problem to be solved. It's just to be looked at. It's not a problem. Pictures aren't problems. They're pictures.
Pictures are not puzzles.
Look, there are people who paint pictures as puzzles. You can do it if you want to. Sure. Particularly perspective ones. You know, where does this, you know, there are playful pictures like that. Of course, if you want to make a picture a puzzle, there are all kinds of children's games in which pictures are puzzles. But that's not Velázquez. I'm not saying a picture can't be a puzzle, but I'm saying that pictures by nature are not puzzles, and this picture is not a puzzle.
So why everybody, I mean not everybody, but a lot of people get into this puzzle thing?
Well, I just think they're wrong. They want something to do with the picture. They don't know what to do. Looking is, you know, is tiring. I mean, we live in a world now where people say it's a visual world, but nobody's looking at anything. They're just rushing around. Are they really looking at something in their hand when they look at an image? They take a photograph and they immediately put it online. I print my photographs and put them in an album and look at them. But that's not what people do with images. Images are fleeting. And a picture isn't fleeting. And you look at people in galleries, there are wonderful photographs now of people standing in galleries looking at their phone in the gallery. It's insane. And that's a little bit like the puzzle. It's a little bit like saying, well, I really can't look at that, I'll look at something else. I'll read something. I'll put something in my ear, going around galleries, listening to somebody talk. Why not look? So I think it's an evasion of the picture.
That's a very interesting point. How the viewer is changing in museums and the way they're looking at
Yeah. I think people are grown-ups and they can go into museums with no aids and look. And I think that all of these visual aids and earphones and such prevent people from looking. They get in the way of looking. They don't assume people are interested in looking.
I think it's a good moment to actually go. Well, do we need to have a break for something? Somebody has to come or somebody?
I don't know.
No?
So how do
It's
you,
okay?
How do you manage this?
I don't know. They were gonna tell me something, but
Yeah.
maybe it's a good moment to ask.
Mario?
No, I haven't gotten anything yet.
Okay.
Okay, so because I don't want to stop in like in 10 minutes if we are getting in the middle of something.
Right.
Can you answer him?
I mean, we can ask him, yeah. I'll call him real quick.
Let's wait a moment, because
Sure.
there was somebody who had to enter, so I want to make sure this.
It's like
Yeah,
Las
it's the right
Meninas,
moment
right?
to
It's
do
the
it.
back door of Las Meninas.
Ya, eso es lo que. Por eso he cortado aquí, porque era un buen momento para hablar de eso.
¿Cortamos?
No cortes, ¿eh?
Okay.
Sigamos.
Wait a second.
Hey, Mario, have they arrived yet? Okay, perfect. Yeah, we're taking a second right now, so if they want to come through, I'll get the blankets out of the way.
El espejo este lo tengo como muy así, entonces es como que me gustaría estar así, no sé si... No, esto no se puede hacer un poco más. Solo moverse.
Sí, o abrir más esto.
Vale, déjalo así. Es porque tengo que estar ahora sí un poco más.
Un poco más.
Sí, ahora está mejor. Es que si no tenía que estar así.
Pegado a la cama.
Sí,
Ok.
estoy un poco... Oh. Okay, good.
Sí, es que además tienes el tripié.
Yeah, I think they're opening the door now.
It's noise. You were
Yeah,
talking about.
that's what I wanted
We
to...
were waiting some imminent noise disaster, so we...
Okay.
You were
Would you like
there.
a cup of coffee or something?
No, I'm happy, thank you. Afterwards, I'll have something, but now I'm
Okay.
concentrating.
So...
Thank you.
Are we good? ¿Se lo puedes colocar? Un momento.
The sound is really ambient. It hears all the sound, right?
I'm just gonna fix very good. Yeah, there you go.
Good.
It's okay, you know. It's nature.
Yeah.
Part of the process.
We are retouching the painting a little bit. That's a... Okay.
Okay.
Are we good? All right. So...
You can close the door, put the blanket, and all these things.
Mario, you stay inside?
Okay.
Just walk out there.
No sé, lo que no te entiendo. ¿Sí?
Okay, we're gonna settle down.
More questions? Okay.
Yeah, good? Right, okay. So, I'm gonna continue with that. What I think was we get into interesting, since this is a viewer's picture, we're really going, analyzing the whole thing about the viewer and also the paint you're saying. So I want to go back to something you said yesterday, that you said that,
Hold a second. They are talking outside.
I think it's those three girls that
He's
came
just
before they
getting warmed
understand.
up.
I think they just didn't understand that being quiet means the whole building, not just theirs.
Were screen sets really that quiet? How could they film movies under such strict conditions? Is that so?
That's why
They did a lot of sound afterwards.
Ah,
They would do sort of overdubbing,
yeah.
so that it didn't matter what.
because
how
they
bad it
couldn't
was.
keep it as quiet as you're trying to keep it. I mean, it would be hopeless. If you see
Yeah,
what
but
those-
we can go back to your home and record
Right.
your conversation again to fix some
Yes,
noises and problems. So we had to.
but you can't wipe noise out.
But with actors, you can do.
Yeah, okay.
If you get a line, there's some noise, you can go back to the
Do
studio
it,
and
right,
record
right,
the line.
right, right.
Like, all the linear movies.
But it should be quiet. Anyway.